Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. Now, the topic of the video will be Introduction to Methods. Now, you know that methods are the behavior of the classes. We know the characteristics that are the attributes, and now we are going to talk about the behavior. So, before we start, let's create a new package because this is another topic. Right click over Java Core A Introduction Classes, new package. Just change here to B, uppercase B. Again, never do that in the real life. And then introduction methods. And then add dot domain. Okay, so how do we start? We need one example, and the example now will be a domain class called calculator. Now, you know, for example, that attributes, we have the access modifier, in this case public, we have the type, and then we have to give the word that will be the what's going to identify this variable. So attributes and methods, they are similar, but the behavior, the things that they are going to do is completely different. So just take into account that we have this line number 4 here. What can we use from this one to create methods? Methods, they always start the same as attributes. They start with access modifier. So far, we only know public. And now, the second part is what this method is going to return. So I could go on and explain how the functions they work in the math world, but I will give you a better example. Let's say that I am a method, and I am called cut an apple in 2 pieces. Now, if you give me an apple and I cut in 2 pieces and I return those 2 pieces to you, it means that I'm returning something to you. In this case, 2 pieces of an apple. If I just cut the apple and I keep it, it means that I'm not returning anything. So in Java, you either have a return type or you say that you are not going to return anything. So basically, you don't be careful to not get confused about returning and output. This method will have an output. If I am the method that will cut an apple into pieces, means that the fact that I'm cutting, and let's say that I'm just putting over the table, or if we are talking about computers, I'm just printing the console, this means that this method has an output, but I'm not returning anything. I'm just outputting this somewhere. So to get things a little bit easier, let's start with, well, this method will not return anything, and the word for that is void. But here, if it's not void, it would be one of the types. Could be primitive or could be a reference type. And then the name of the method. Remember that we have conventions for every single piece of information in Java, and it's not different for methods. In this case, they follow the same as the attributes. First, if you have only one word, all lowercase, multiple words, the first letter of each word should be uppercase. Well, the famous camel case. So some 2 numbers. And now we open and close parentheses and open curly braces and close curly braces. So if you look at the tests that we have been doing so far, now you probably realize that we do have something very similar to public static void main, but we don't know, for example, what is statics or what it is going on between the parentheses. Okay, so let's go back to our calculator. Now I have a method and I will just tell, okay, I'm going to sum 2 numbers, and these are the 2 numbers that we have. And I'm going to remove this attribute because it doesn't make sense to have age in calculator. Now let's go back here and then create a new package, change the domain to test, and we are keeping the same pattern that we have so far. And now calculator test 0, 1. Since this is a test, psvm and press tab. Okay, so you know how to create objects. We first need to import the class. So calculator, and we have the import right here. Now I need to give an identifier for my reference variable. I will call calculator, and I need an object, new calculator. Now that I have my reference variable and my object, it's pretty simple. I just have to do it exactly like we did for variables. The reference variable, dot, and the method. You can see that the difference here is that when we are working with attributes, there is no parentheses. So that's the difference that you can see between a method and an attribute. So if I come here to the last student test, you'll see that we have student.name and there are no parentheses, and we are assigning something to this variable. But in the case of methods, you just call exactly like we have here if they do not have something that we will call later parameters or arguments. Okay, so now that we called, I think we can execute Ctrl+Shift+F10, and we can see the result 20. So what's going on here? Basically, the flow is you have, when you execute this code, line number 7 being executed, and then line number 8. But when the Java gets to line number 8, it will then realize, oh, okay, so now I need to go inside the calculator class and then execute this method. So this is what's going to do. It's going to come here and execute. And if I have another line, it will always come back. So it will start line number 7, number 8, then it will come back to not come back, but it will go to calculator, execute line 6, then it will go back to calculator test 01, and then execute line number 9. So if I press Shift F9, we are going to see this flow. So this is the line being executed. F8, it will move to the next line. F8, you can see that we are now inside the calculator class. F8, it will finish and go back to calculator test, and then it will finish everything, and we can see the results in the console. So remember, we are always working with objects here. So even though it's going to this class, that's just because of IntelliJ is making things easier for us. But in memory, what's happening is that inside the calculator, you are executing this this method. So if I come here, and I can show you draw.io. So basically, this line right here is creating a reference variable, same thing as you know so far, and we have an object, and inside this object, that's this calculator. So this one is having a reference to this one. We have this method sum two numbers. So basically, when you are summing these two numbers, when you do calculator dot sum two numbers, the object is the one responsible for executing this. So even though there in the code you go all the way to the calculator class, the domain class, you are not actually executing the reference variable or the class, but the object itself. So what happens if, for example, I add subtract two numbers? So let's do it. Public void subtract two numbers, and then south a random number. Now, if I just execute whatever I have now, I can either click here or here. I cannot press Ctrl+Shift+F10 because this class does not have a public static void main. I can press Shift+F10. That will execute the last class executed, the one that's here. You can see that my method is not being executed. IntelliJ is giving a hint saying that this is never used. It's safe to delete. But what I want is inside the calculator class, for example, after this south, I will add here calculator dot subtract two numbers. So basically it will execute line number 7, number 8, then we'll come here to calculator, execute line number 6, Then it will go back to calculator test, execute here, and then go to this line number 10 and go back to calculator and execute line number 10. And then it will go back and finish the program execution. So you should see 20 finishing class calculator test and 19. There you go. So this is just an introduction to methods. We are going to keep talking about several different concepts. So I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video. Bye.